So, on behalf of all of West Orange, I would like to thank Donald Payne and Mikey Sherrill for taking time out of what must be the most hectic January in DC to address their constituents tonight. Tonight, we'll be hearing from elected officials both on Main Street and in DC, and it really warms my heart to see this crucial dialogue play out. This is the fabric of our democracy, our fragile democracy, and in order to strengthen it, we must emphasize the connection between local and national politics. It's easy to feel cynical and alienated from the political process when you minimize the role of municipal politics. Many local candidates run as independent in West Orange, stressing that the policy we set in town hall should be isolated from the policy battles that play out in the Capitol building. While I appreciate that we are largely keeping bipartisan politics out of our local elections, I feel that we miss a key opportunity to contribute to the intragovernmental dialogue. We all know that divided governments and deadlocks in Congress can make federal legislation lag behind the will of the people in America. But instead of waiting for change to come top down, grassroots organizing can make change go bottom up. The policy that we create at the municipal level echoes upwards to make the policies that we create as a state, and upwards still to the federal government. As an individual, you may not have much sway over Congress, but you certainly have influence in town hall. I'm proud to say that West Orange's representatives in town hall are not only aware of this relationship, but they actively participate in this intragovernmental dialogue. Within 24 hours of the insurrection, our own town council president, Cindy Matute-Brown, took swift action to write a letter to Representative Sherrill condemning the act of sedition and calling for the removal of the president. To close her letter, she wrote, "I have asked my constituents not to lose faith in our democracy, but remain committed to its defense and reform, in order that we may continue to enjoy the protections and freedoms so many have died to protect." And through the town council, she passed a resolution affirming West Orange's stance as a township. Not only does it condemn the domestic terrorists, but it formally calls upon every representative of West Orange at the state and federal level to demand for the same. By holding all of our representatives accountable, our town council is affirming that as a township, we can send a ripple that leads to action that impacts the whole nation. This same principle can be applied for any progressive policy that is lagging behind in Washington. Like our mayor just said, we have all the ingredients to be a model global community. And I hope that our new town council can come together to pass any resolutions calling on our representatives in Trenton and Washington for commitments to progressive policies that we've seen shot down for years now. Perhaps commitments to further environmental regulation and sustainability as a township in the long term, or Medicare for all. These are things that we can pass if we reimagine our relationship with the federal government and be creative in the way that we conduct local politics. And with that, our next speaker will be Town Council President Cindy Matute-Brown.
Thank you so much for that, Jill. All righty.
Hi, good evening, West Orange. Thank you so much, Joe, for always adding your voice, not just your voice, Joe, but that of your counterparts on the West Orange Youth Caucus and our revolution, of course, always there with a progressive voice, our young Dems and my organization as well, where I sit as a steering committee member of Essex Rising, always proud to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in everything that we do progressive, because while these are very uncomfortable conversations, difficult conversations, they are certainly conversations that are necessary to have. I have to say that as a local elected official, when I decided to run, I was also told that, a lot of what we do is really just contracts for garbage disposal, garbage and leaf collection, because it is, bipartisan politics here in town. But I have a very different perspective. I have a platform as your elected official and a responsibility thereby to ensure that we're having the conversations here locally that impact us, both on the national level, on the state level, and on a local level. These are very uncomfortable conversations to have for some elected officials, because I realize that in in sending a letter to Representative Mikey Sherrill asking her to support the removal of President Trump, I am going to have or be in disfavor with some of my constituents, and I understand and I accept that. However, I have a greater responsibility to ensure that I hold our elected officials accountable to ensure that our residents are all safe. It's very difficult. I have to say that after watching, as horrified as you all were while we were all watching together, my very next, the very next morning, my first text message was to our Assemblyman John McKeon, and he will probably tell you it was probably like 7 in the morning. However, I couldn't help but feel this anxiety that I needed him to help us work through, because it is an us anxiety. The fact that we don't have legislation, at least I don't believe, he is doing some research, legislation that ensures that we're able to weed out white supremacy that exists in law enforcement. The FBI released a report, I believe it was 2006, that discussed exactly that, law enforcement infiltrating white supremacy. And it's something that we have to talk about. It's something that we have to take action against. If there isn't any legislation that addresses that, then here in our state, then we need to make sure that we create that legislation so that we can here weed out any semblance of white supremacy in our law enforcement. And he is going to do some research on that. There are some states that have that legislation, and I look forward to New Jersey being added to that. If we do not have that recourse, it is absolutely necessary, you know, for us to ensure that we support that. And I want to say that what we witnessed on the 6th, we all blame President Trump, and that's too simple of a matter to do. President Trump did not cause this. He certainly uncovered or made it very comfortable or welcoming even for white supremacy and anti-Semitism to come out from their shadows. But this is the America that, it's hard to say, but it is the America that many people of color, Black people, Hispanic people have known. We have friends who were deported and their children are put in cages, and we don't want to talk about it because it's just not a comfortable thing to talk about, but we must. And I say that because it's important for all of us to understand that this is the fabric of America. It has always been. Ta-Nehisi Coates had in his book said that, you know, he wanted us to know one thing. And that one thing is that this hatred of Black people, this hatred is part of what is the tradition of America, is to destroy people of color, and that is what we see. What we saw when it came to George Floyd and the 12-year-old Tamir Rice playing in the park. We have to have these discussions. And I want to take a moment also to thank Mayor Parisi for his words and his willingness to continue to learn and to grow. I'd be remiss if I didn't say we've come quite a long way from our grassroots activism days here in West Orange, but I am certainly happy that at the very least, we've already had the discussion about building more racially inclusive communities. We've had anti-bias training, not just for our employees, but also for our elected officials. It is very important for us to understand through that lens the policy decisions that we make, even at a local level. You know, anything from rent control protections, which our ordinance had expired, but you know, if we're not thinking with that lens and through that lens, we don't really know what to look for and how to help our residents. I also am very happy that we were able to pass the resolution that Joe mentioned. It was passed unanimously. These are very difficult conversations, but we have to have them. I'm looking forward to the restructuring of the Human Relations Commission. We have a Human Relations Commission to represent us, but the organizational structure sometimes stifle process, and we are working with the support of my council colleagues to ensure that they have some autonomy to be able to continue this necessary work to talk about the issues that address the issues that impact all of us here in West Orange. And I have to say that one of the other very difficult conversations to have in these spaces and not very popular at all. And my council colleagues and my mayor will tell you that I don't make political decisions, politically expedient decisions, but I do speak what I feel is necessary to be spoken. And in this space, I want to talk about very briefly, and I'm watching my time, guys, I promise, the fact that, you know, we do live in a world where this America has two systems of justice, and I'm putting justice in air quotes for people of color and Black people, that doesn't exist as we saw, as the world saw on January 6th. We have to change that. We have to make sure that we're the voice that is pushing that change. And also to our law enforcement unions who supported and endorsed President Trump. I want to hear you rescind that endorsement. Blue lives did not matter to him during that day of the assault. It was painful to watch your law enforcement brothers and sisters being attacked, having to lose their lives. So let's have these conversations where we break down these barriers and we're truthful about what our agenda is. I'm looking forward to hearing from our law enforcement agencies and our law enforcement unions a rescinding of their support of this hatred. And I see my time has now expired. And I just want to say, lastly, I'll leave you with this, that Dr. Martin Luther King said that the time is always right to do the right thing. So I am asking everyone to join voices, to join forces, and let's continue to support our congressional representatives to ensure that we weed out those representatives that do not have our best interests at heart, who do not protect our democracy. With that, I will leave you, West Orange. Thank you so much for your support, and I look forward to a continued building of racially inclusive communities.